starts our 11th year, which is pretty cool. And when we think about the last 10 years, we have covered a lot of ground and a lot of topics with some really great leaders. The other fun, exciting change we have that I'm really excited to announce is that we have a new character as part of our program this morning. It's a goodness barista. Can we give Bo a hand?
Morning. Good morning.
Okay, Bo.
Yes.
What is the job description of a goodness barista?
It's a great question. My job is to brew up the buzz on how good leadership pays for good leaders. And to kick things off, we are going to watch a video that answers the question, what is good leadership?
CEOs and business owners never stop dreaming about how everything's gonna be better when the business gets to the next level. That's just what they do. According to the Association for Corporate Growth, 3/4 of all mid-sized companies are working on next-level transformation strategies. But sadly, McKinsey confirms that only 1 out of 4 of those strategies actually deliver on their promise. It's the leadership teams that don't know how to make their transformations pay. It's because most executives think the strategies are exciting and the transformation will be easy. But most employees aren't excited. They feel disrupted and they get scared. Here's where the bell curve applies. In any given population, there will always be some early adopters who love the new strategy right away, and some who will actively resist and probably never come along. At least half of the people in the middle will protect their own jobs and brace themselves for a topsy-turvy path where things often go sideways. That's when big strategies lose momentum. The reason they fail is because the executive team doesn't invest the time and energy to align the culture with the big opportunity. It's really hard work. It's especially tough without coaching. So if you want to increase your odds, are you willing to consider goodness as a leadership strategy? What's goodness? Goodness is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. At Good Leadership, we anticipate the problems you'll create with your big ideas. And we help you turn the disruption into cultural alignment so people thrive together. Because business transformation strategies only pay when people thrive together and win together. Here's where Good Leadership coaches can help. Our team coaches your team through the disruption to make sure you get to the next level you expect. Want to know if your culture will help you succeed? Find out with a 1-question survey called the GPS, the Goodness Pays Score. It's easy and it's free. Using a 1 to 10 scale, how would you rate your direct leader on proactively promoting goodness in their decision-making within your organization? If your GPS score is 6 or below, your culture isn't ready and you'll likely fail. We have data to prove if your employees answer with an average 9 or above, you'll have an 81% probability you will succeed. So, if you want to increase your odds, why not try Good Leadership Coaching? We'll help you grow with goodness and ensure your transformation pays. Get started here, goodleadership.com.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce the co-host this morning who's going to start to talk about what those results mean. And he is the creator of this breakfast. He is the founder and CEO of Good Leadership Enterprises. He's an international speaker and executive coach, and he's written 8 books on leadership, including his latest, How Goodness Pays. Please join me in welcoming Paul Batz.
Customers, employees, community, and shareholders. When we talk about thrive together in the goodness definition, this is what we mean. We need to be leaders who produce a positive impact on all 4 of these populations. And that it brings to life this idea that actually caring about employees, customers, shareholders, and the community is actually the source of conscious capitalism. I met Charles 6 years ago. At that particular meeting, it was in kind of a dark room. It was a gorgeous room. It was a dark room, and there was a bunch of bankers in there, and it was all kind of serious. And all of a sudden, this bright face stuck out of the crowd. And he stood up and he told his story, and immediately we became friends. You're about to understand why. Please join me in welcoming Charles Antis.
30 years ago and 11 months, Antis Roofing was born. And I'd love to tell you that it was born with this great business plan, but I didn't know what a business plan was then. I started a roofing company because the company I was working for didn't have enough work. And I had a baby at home. And so I discovered I had a skill. I could repair anything that leaked from rain. I couldn't really sell you a roof. You didn't have a crew, didn't have a kettle, but I could repair anything that leaked from rain. And so I got confident in that, and I put that out there. And I got about 2 calls a week. I was so desperate for calls that my work one week was putting weather stripping on the home bedroom that I had converted to an office. So if somebody called, they wouldn't hear my daughter. And so under that type of condition, I got a call one day, and it was from a woman, and she had leaks in every room. I was like, yes. So that's a great thing. And I'm driving there the next day, and I'm noticing, and this is in Los Angeles, I'm noticing as I'm getting closer and closer to the area where the home will be, that the homes are getting smaller and smaller, and then more disheveled, and until finally I turn on the home that the street would be on, where the home would be on, and I look, and I just see dead grass and this home set back, and I drive up to it slowly, and it was like one of those 1/2 addresses, like 140 and a half, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not it. And I walk up. Dad always says you do the right thing, so I knocked on the door, not knowing what I was going to find, and 3 things happened right away that changed everything for me, and it leads me to be right here today. And the first is this woman answers the door, and I'll never forget her face when she answered the door. It was this tired face. I don't know how else to describe it, but tired, like I've been tired all month. Before I could say hello, I was overwhelmed with the smell of mildew. Like I've never smelt before, it just hit me, and I started to recoil. And all I know, and I had a fight or flight syndrome going. I had to get out of here. But as I started to pull away, I felt a tug at my finger. And I looked down, and in contrast to the mom's face and my face, there was this little girl with blonde hair, with the biggest smile I can ever remember. And she just was like so happy because she had a visitor in her home, and probably didn't happen very often. And she pulled me into the living room, into this tiny hallway, and then she turns into this room, and I knew it was her bedroom because she pointed to this poster on the wall. It was a My Little Pony poster on the wall. But when she did that, my eyes were drawn to the floor, where I saw 4 mattresses with moldy bedding. And it still hits me hard when I see that. But I remember when that happened, I was stuck. I remember that feeling like, it doesn't feel like you know where I'm going now. It felt like, oh my God, I have a mortgage payment to make in a couple of weeks. I have no money to pay this. This little girl, as cute as she is, she's a threat to me. I need to get out of this home. And I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, a long 30 seconds, until finally the mom walks back in the room. And I saw that look on her face again. And I don't know why it was her face and not the little girl's, but when I saw that mom's face, I just turned to her, and something came out of me before I could stop it that I don't remember ever saying before. And I looked at her and I said, I'm going to take care of your roof. And as soon as I said it, I thought, am I? Can I? I don't know. And so I climbed up on that roof. Please, maybe just be like a hole, like maybe, just one hole. No, the roof was shot. It needed a brand new roof. And so I got on the phone, and I got 6 volunteers, and we went back on that home where those 6 siblings lived, and we gave them a dry roof that weekend from a bunch of product from Home Depot. I just remember it was drippy on the outside, but it was dry on the inside, and that family stayed in that home. And that was a really great experience. In fact, I sometimes call that my doctor on an airplane moment. It's like we think if there's a doctor on an airplane and they hear that note from the pilot, like, hey, we have somebody that needs help. I think that we believe that doctor, that he or she's going to raise their hand and say yes. And I doubt that we think that doctor is going to send a bill for their service. And so I think looking back, this was one of those moments. And it was a moment where I felt like I couldn't afford it, but I did it anyway. And I gotta say, that moment reoccurred. It reoccurred until finally we were kind of like stricken with this condition at Antis. We didn't talk about it back then, but we could never let a family have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And it was the thing. And it developed eventually into what our brand is today, that we know why we exist. We exist to keep families safe and dry. That seems so simple, but it took 30 years to come up with that tagline. So I tell you these stories because when business is real, when your stories matter, when they happen in business, and this led to Habitat for Humanity. I have to give a quick plug for Habitat for Humanity. I've been on the board in Orange County for almost 10 years, but 11 years ago, I got a call from Sharon Ellis, the CEO of Habitat Orange County, and she said, "Charles, will you donate a roof?" And it was an easy yes. And then we finished that roof. She goes, "Charles, will you donate another roof?" Okay. And then, "Hey, we got a military development here, military families, you do 8 more?" Like, "Oh, okay." So we did it, and that ended up being an awesome experience. And I have to say, to this day, we've donated every roof in Habitat in Orange County. We just hit a milestone of $1 million in roofing, along with Eagle Tile last year. So we've donated $1 million in roofing for every family that needed it, and that feels good because now our company knows why we exist. We know why we exist, and we believe we have this common thing with you. Many of you, I talked about Habitat this morning with some of you, and we have this common thing that we believe that everyone deserves a decent place to live. What an awesome thing that is when you know something so clear about why you exist. Well, I want to go deeper because all of us have our stories, and I'm telling you nothing but stories. I'm going to go back to when I grew up. When I grew up, I was raised a Mormon kid in Oregon. And I'm no longer Mormon, so I'm a foreman. But when you're Mormon, believe me, you're doing service, like service projects every weekend, helping people move. I do not like helping people move. I mean, if you're gonna move, box up your stuff, but it's not fun service. So service to me was not something I loved. And I go to Thailand. As a Mormon, I'm asked to go to Thailand. I was like, oh, I don't want to go knock on doors. I don't want to do this. And then one of the first things I learned in Thailand is knocking on doors was against the law. I was like, yes. And we're going to do service over here. Oh, service is teaching English. Yes. And so this was a great experience. I really did have a Peace Corps-like experience in Thailand. But I'm telling you about one day, I'm 19 years old. Excuse me. Get some water. I'm 19 years old. And I'm as goofy. If any of you have ever seen the play, The Book of Mormon, it's this racy. It's awesome because it nails the awkwardness and awesomeness of what it's like about, of 8, 19, 20-year-old guys living together in a home. And so I'm in that home, and I get one day. Elder Antis, I'm Elder Antis there. This guy comes in, he goes, "Elder Antis," I go, "Yeah, today we're going to do a service project." "Oh, we're going to an orphanage." "Okay, the orphanage is not going to be so pleasant though." "Okay, why?" "Well, it's hot, it smells, and they mix the populations of the physically and mentally handicapped, and that's not a good thing." So I went there with a really low expectation, and I get there, it's about 11 a.m., I walk into a room that's about twice as big as this stage, and there's 20 kids on the ground. I'm by myself, and there's 20 kids taking a nap. And as I walk in, one of the kids lifts up, and it's about a 9-year-old girl. And she has red cheeks painted on, like a clown had visited earlier. And she just stood up, and she smiled, and she had this most arresting smile, like, oh, it just lightened my mood. And then she put up these arms like this, and of course, that means pick me up. And I went. And I was excited to pick her up. I was suddenly in this good mood. But when I went to pick her up, I was shocked. Because when I thought she would weigh about 30 pounds, as I lifted, she weighed about 12, 13 pounds. And I just had this shock. And I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of bounced, like you do when your neighbor hands you the snot-nosed kid you don't want to hold. I kind of bounced. And I went to do this bounce off, but I felt those long arms dig into mine. And so I kind of regrouped, and maybe a long 30 seconds later, I went to bounce again. But as I went to bounce this time, 2 things happened. She dug her arms all the way around and dug them in my back. And then she just looked at me and she just smiled, not like a smile I had ever seen before in my life. Like everything in her lit up and everything in me melted. I don't know what happened. I've never felt that in all my years in service, teaching English, great, whatever. But all of a sudden, right then, in that moment, holding this little girl, something happened in me. Something awoken in me. And the only way I could ever been able to describe it since then is it reminds me growing up in Oregon in my grandma's house where grandma cooked on a wooden stove, and she was stirring up this pot with this long stick. And it was like grandma was stirring something up inside me, and something was awoken, and I was alive. And looking back, that's a powerful moment. And I see a theme. I see a theme where while my company exists to keep families safe and dry, I have to acknowledge and lift children, like a lot of you. And so, going on in my life, I'm going to show you how life plays in a business, because it does in many ways. But another story that's way more personal to me was getting married. I'm 57 years old. I got married at 50 after saying I'd never get married again. And it was the best decision I've ever made. One of the hard parts was to have children. Do I have more children? I've already had children. Do I have more children? And I was so scared, and it was so awkward, and I was so like, what am I going to do? And I made the best decision of my life. And my wife and I were pregnant. My wife, Dawn, and she was pregnant with twins. And we'd already named the twins, Charlie and Gracie. And she's carrying them a super healthy pregnancy, but a really big belly. And we just got back from our baby moon. I never knew what a baby moon was. Look it up. It's awesome. Except when we got back the next day, and she's about 7 weeks out from the due date, she felt a little ill. We went to the doctor. The doctor said, come to the hospital, bring your bags. You have preeclampsia. I'm Googling preeclampsia. It's like, oh, no. The babies need to come out. And so we go to the hospital. The doctor didn't say that, but we go right to a room. There's 4 doctors in the room. There's one for my wife, one for Charlie, one for Gracie, and a doctor for me, because it was difficult watching a cesarean birth, especially when I'd seen other births where I heard a baby cry. And this birth, when Charlie came out first, he was pulled out first, I just remember this thought like, oh, he looks like my wife's father. He looked like what Benjamin Button must have looked like if they would have put the camera on him. You know, that was my experience. And it's funny now, but at the time it was like, oh my God. And then my daughter came out, and immediately there was this little bit of a race to get tubes in. And suddenly all I remember was everything being whisked away and me going up to the room, and then finally going in to see Charlie and Gracie. And they're inside a NICU. They're inside the Children's Hospital NICU, and there's 60 other NICUs, and there's bells and whistles going off. And this happy pregnancy suddenly turned into like, are our children going to be okay? But the Children's Hospital nurses, the Orange County CHOC nurses, they said, hey, if you want your kids to heal, this is what we've learned. Come in every day, twice. Pull off your shirt. Lay the kids on your chest, naked, skin on skin. And this is what we found will give them the best chance to heal. And so I said, okay. And I took a month off work, and every day my wife and I made that drive. And it was a long drive, half an hour each way to Mission Hospital. And every day when we walk into that NICU, we would walk right by the Ronald McDonald House station, where a volunteer would offer us a bed if we needed to spend the night, coffee, working on the computer, whatever. They were there. They were just like, hey, come on, you know, how can we help? And I remember specifically how I felt. I was polite as much as I had to be, but I ignored Susan. Her name was Susan, the one I saw the most, mostly because looking back now, I didn't want to be a part of the sick kid club. I didn't want any part of that. I was in denial. I was trying not to feel sorry for myself. And that was the thing, every day, twice a day, going in and out. And then one day, I had to go to do something for work that morning, and I was racing, and I was behind, and I was going to have Charlie on my chest that day. And I'm driving to the hospital. It's about 9 a.m., and I realize, oh, I have really bad chronic heartburn going on. In fact, those of you who have had chronic heartburn, you know it can be so bad you're not going to be able to do what you planned on doing, let alone rest a sleeping baby on your chest. And so I was feeling sorry for myself, wondering what I'm going to do, realizing why I'm getting this heartburn because of these kids. I walk in, and nobody's at the Ronald McDonald House station. And since nobody was there, I looked down, and I saw this thing staring at me with like a neon sign, and it was a little green Nature Valley granola bar. You know that one. You've seen it. You've had it. And that thing felt like that would solve my GERD. And if there was, and GERD's an ugly word for chronic heartburn, but it's an ugly day. And so I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? And nobody was there. And had there been somebody there, I probably wouldn't have stolen it, but I stole that bar. I say stole because I had no intention of paying Ronald McDonald House back a dime. But I stole that bar, and I did the math in my head. It might have cost him 20 cents. I'd reasoned with it. And I don't remember what happened after that until about a half an hour later. I have this clear memory of laying there on that chair with my shirt off and Charlie there. And I just remember feeling grateful that I had that bar because I was completely settled and he was sleeping, and it was the right place to be. And I tell you that story because that's my real life experience. And I wasn't proud of it. But then a few months later, I'm speaking somewhere, and this lady comes up and goes, "Hey, I'm from Ronald McDonald House." We started talking, and we discovered that I really discovered why it was there. The metaphor made sense. Oh, you know, I have something to confess. I stole a granola bar from you a couple years ago. No, that's great. Oh, good. You want another one? No. But in that reciprocation right there, I discovered that, you know, the Ronald McDonald Houses, there's 165 of them in the US. I discovered that they exist to keep the families literally next to, across the hall or across the street from the hospital, because that's going to help children heal, if the family can heal together. And so I was so fascinated by that. I said, wow, you keep families close when they need it the most. And then I'm a marketing guy, and also I love to do good stuff, and I've already had this experience with Habitat. And I said, what if we kept you safe and dry? So now we kept the families safe, dry, and close to their sick kids. And they said, sure. And so it wasn't long after that I became a board member for Orange County Ronald McDonald House, which I am today, and I love it very much. And it's like, wow, my real life story plays in my business. And so that was just really fascinating to see how real life and business, when they co-merge and when people know who you are, and when you ring with authenticity, they get to know who you are. They get to really know who you are. If you're aligned in a time when authenticity is so misdiagnosed in our world, we need this. And people that know, that see the Habitat brand along with me, then they, like I said, they know that we, like them, are aligned in believing that everyone has a decent place to live. And they see the Ronald McDonald House brand, they believe that, oh, you like me believe that it is unimaginable to ignore sick children, and there's power there. So what's also awesome is I'm a member of the National Roofing Contractors Association board. I'm very involved in that and the Roofing Alliance, which is the philanthropic arm. And so they came to me a couple of years ago and said, hey, what can we do? What can we do to change roofing? Because 3 out of 5 companies fail. People don't trust roofers. And they gave me all these stats. And I said, let's donate all the roofs to Habitat. We can do it. And they quickly said, no, there's too many. That'd be $1 billion in roofing. And so I had all these ideas. Until finally I said one day, wait, there's 165 Ronald McDonald Houses. What if we provided the roofing, all of us roofing companies? And I kind of forgot that I had said it because they had kind of laughed at some of my ideas. And then I went to the Roofing Alliance board meeting a couple of years ago. I sat down and I haven't read the board packet. And all of a sudden there was this Ronald McDonald House presentation. I'm looking around, I go, what's going on? And I watched these 80 roofers, mostly men, the kind of a stereotypical rough-looking, tumbling cowboy. And I watched them all take their thumbs up to their eyes when they showed the Ronald McDonald film so they wouldn't see, no one would see they're crying. I was one of them. We didn't want anyone to see that we were crying. But then I watched this all vote in the 130 years of the National Roofing Contractors Association. For the first time, we adopted a nonprofit partner. And I watched these men vote unanimously that we would from now on keep all of these families safe, dry, and close to their sick kids. And that was an awesome moment. And since that time, over 200 companies have adopted all of 165 freestanding Ronald McDonald Houses across this country. And I'm gonna stop and applause that right now. And that is like, I'm loving life. This is so good. And so when I look at you, and what is your story? Your story is powerful. Your life is perfect. With whatever your folly, whatever those things that have happened to me, those goofy things I've done, my life is perfect. And I want us to look at it that way. Whether you're aligned with Habitat, Ronald McDonald House, or you're like my friend Paul Leone. Paul Leone is the CEO of the Illumination Foundation in Orange County and in LA. And Paul helps the chronically homeless. And Paul says this. He tells the story of Stephen, a one-armed veteran that they found near death living under the freeway. And when he came to 3 weeks later, the first thing he said to Paul was, You know, I can count on my one hand how many times I've been acknowledged by another human being in the 10 years that I lived under this freeway. And when Paul tells that story, I'll never forget it. And we never forget it, because Paul also tells 3 months later with Stephen, with his military uniform pinned up on one side and his girlfriend on the other when he graduated that ceremony 3 months later, and he was able to live in housing again and look in the mirror knowing he'd been acknowledged. So what is your story? There's power. My last thing I'll say is this, is when we know our stories and when we realize our lives are perfect exactly how they are, and we're curious daily, then we'll have power. And with that power, we can change everything. Thank you.
So Charles, you said that three out of 5 roofing companies fail, and yours has been around for 30 plus years. So tell us a little bit about the firm, the Antis Roofing Company.
Yeah, we exist in the HOA space. So in California, almost everything is built under a homeowner association. And sometimes they vote on their roofing as a whole. So we bid on that market, but we service more HOAs than anybody in the SoCal area.
And I'm curious about your ideas about teams. We saw in the data up there that we collected that 2/3 of these people manage teams. And of course, that's what we do, is we coach teams from one place to the other. You've obviously been doing this a long, long time. Can you share just one success habit about how you go about either leading or putting together high-performing teams?
Well, I think I've learned a lot about myself. You do a lot of assessments, and I've learned what I'm good and not good at. And I'm managing teams is not my specialty, but in leadership, I've learned a habit. And the habit is I only use inclusive words, and I only compliment. So my goal is to only compliment, which means I never criticize, or if possible, never even tell them how they could do it better. To have that goal to only push things like, hey, great job, hey, what's up, hey, is so much better for my personality, because the moment, I'm like a flashlight of good energy, a lot of times, like, hey, but then the moment it's like, hey, this is how why did you do it that way? I don't say it that way, but that's how they hear it with my passion. And so for me personally, I heard this from Jen Sincero, who wrote You Are a Badass, which I recommend. It's a great book. And she said, when someone annoys you, and they kind of annoy you, how do you tell them? When is the right time to tell them? How do you do it? And then I'm like, I couldn't wait to turn the page. And she said, never. What? Well, I'm not going to be understood. And it's the most beautiful gift that I've been given by not having to be understood and not getting everything I want. In fact, not wanting anything too much.
And then my assumption is that you've built teams that are self-correcting. They know how to help each other stop doing those things that are making things worse.
Well,
because it's not coming from you.
Yes, there's some people that manage better than me, and they have a little different personality. But also, I actually have something right here. The greatest promo product we've ever come up with, we just came up with 2 weeks ago. And it is the Antis Roofing Every Nail Matters nail file. At Antis Roofing, we like to say that every nail matters because it does. So here's another nail file for you, Paul. So that expression is fantastic. And the reason it's fantastic is it says 2 things. Like, our price is not the lowest price. Every nail matters. Oh, there's 200,000 parts. Oh, if a nail goes in too far, it could mean the roof doesn't last as long. Yes. But what I love about Every Nail Matters with that reference is it also is a people component. There's a put people first component. And when I have a lot of insides, outsides of your company have to match. Your culture and your brand better match. And when it doesn't, you're in trouble. In fact, when it doesn't, I like to say I'm like when I'm out in front, this is great. Isn't this great? I'm like Will Ferrell in Old School when he's streaking and his wife sees him and she's like, honey, get in the car. He's like, hey, honey, come on, everyone's doing it. That's what it feels like. But you have to be right and balanced with your team. So.
I'm about to ask you that you said something that at the very end that a certain style of positive thinking uses all the time, and that your life is perfect and whole and complete. So perfect. Your life is perfect. So what do you do to maintain that?
Well, I think what I'm referring to is I can often wake up with, I'm going to call it an old lie. It's a rough word, but maybe it's an untruth. And the untruth is that something's wrong with me. The untruth is, it's like I wake up, I'm going to give you more than just the words. I wake up and sometimes, and there's a, oh shit, pardon my language. Oh, you got to hang on to this. It's all going to go away. I don't know where that comes from. It kind of been the tapes of my childhood somehow, but I wake up with that. But I'm able to, through a morning practice of journaling and a little meditation, cast that off and go, F that. This is a magic day of creation. Now that's fancy words, they're goofy. I like to use words that you can't, I don't leave anybody out. You can call me weird. I live in California. I've learned that I can hold that. But that's it. I turn the day into a magic day. My 5-year-old girl was sick. Gracie was sick 2 weeks ago, and I saw Gracie. I go, Gracie, how are you? And she's sniffling. I go, what's today, Gracie? And she says, Dad, it's the best day ever. And I just like, yes. And you know what? I talked to her, how was the day? It was great, Dad. And it's like, it's an attitude. It's a mind shift. And it's a promotional mindset. And I'll do anything to hang on to that.
Hey, Bo, what do we want to ask from the audience?
We've got a lot of great questions coming in. Thank you, everybody. It's going to be tough to pick one, so I'm going to pick kind of 3, but they're small. The first one is a 2-part question. Do all areas of your company have a connection to your mission? And then how do you foster this mission for the team installing shingles? And then if you have time for it, a lot of people are wondering how your twins are doing today.
I'm going to start there because in my hurry, I didn't tell you the twins are 100% healthy. And that's the worst part of the story to leave out, so thank you. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah.
They're amazing. They're amazing. Then can you give me the first part too?
Yeah. Do all areas of your company have a connection to your mission? And the second part of that connecting to it is how do you foster this mission for the team installing shingles?
So yes, we do. Is it perfect? No, it's not. And any company they'll tell you that's working with CSR is it's constantly evolving. The way we talk about it's constantly evolving. As you know, you're one of these leaders in that space. So, but it does connect. We involve our team on 2 things that I would mention, like that are really regular. One is Meals of Love at Ronald McDonald House. We invite everybody out, not only our team from the office, which a lot come, and from the field, but also from different stakeholders, supply chain, whoever. We invite everybody out. We also do a lot of habitat builds. Being on the board of Habitat, we sponsor, since we don't have all the roofs, we do 4 team builds a year, and we'll bring out all these people, both our employees, different stakeholders, and those are some of the items that we do. We also do, I have a VP that's a board member for American Red Cross, and we do the different drives for them. And so we do whatever it's really what we have to do is listen to our employees constantly and constantly reinvent how that we do it, because sometimes what happens is certain demographics left off. For example, if we have mostly immigrant labor, which we do, and they have a different cultural aspect, maybe it's not, you have to really listen to them to build the bridge all the way to them. So in helping with national disasters like we do with American Red Cross, we also, when they had the earthquakes in Mexico a year and a half ago, we went to our people and we sent checks to all the families who had damages back in earthquakes, so that we find ways to get involved and listen to our people. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ask this question at the end every time we do an interview like this. So can you give us one specific example that you know for sure goodness pays for you?
I mean, I could go a million directions, but I told you a lot what fulfills me today. But I've done a lot of assessments, and I recommend that. And I was at an assessment and I learned from a cohort friend of mine when she put this on me, and she said, Charles, you live to ignite passion in others for social change. And once I put that on, I never knew who I was until that moment. I put that on, and that's the fact that I get to be here and be in your book and share with you, and we're both visionaries, and we're figuring this out, and we're coming on the same that we're finding the same principles to be true, even though our language and our cultures where we live are slightly different. And I think that this is the most awesome opportunity that I could ever hope for. And I have the perfect life. And I've had the perfect life since I've started, changing my mindset. And it keeps getting better. And today, I get to be, I don't compare myself to you anymore, Paul, or to you. I used to, and I never measured up. But today, I compare myself to myself. And I am the most awesome version of myself I've ever been. And I love it.
Yeah, thank you so much.